AutoCAD 2011, the user coordinate system. We're going to start by creating a new model space with a name plot style 3D layout. Opening that, we see we have our modeling solids toolbar, 3D modeling already set for us. And we're going to discuss a little bit about the coordinate system in AutoCAD. As you can see, there's three axes, the X, Y, and the Z axis, which allows us to draw in three-dimensional space. I guess a good way to start this would be to draw a solid primitive, as we've done in past exercises. We're going to start that 3D box. Actually, I think we're going to go to 3D mesh today. We're going to go to 3D mesh. We're going to start that first corner at 0, 0. By default, that'll put us in the XYZ axis at a centroid or center point without having to type in the Z coordinate. So 0, 0 will work fine. Now it's looking for a cube length, a length or if you can give it the option of making it a cube. In this case, we're just going to pick arbitrarily somewhere along the line and give it some thickness. And notice that our UCS icon is still located in the lower left corner of the box. Now, drawing a line, enter, L enter, from 0, 0. You'll notice its origin point is in the lower left corner of the box, and you will only be able to draw on the XY plane if you do indeed start drawing an orthographic or even isometric. One of the advantages of the user coordinate system allows users to draw different shapes on different planes for more of a modeling feel. So we're going to start by drawing that exact same, actually we'll start with a rectangle, and we're going to draw it at 0, 0. And as you can see, it is on the XY plane. To give you more of an idea of where we're at, well, we'll draw that. We're going to give it some height. We're going to extrude this rectangle. We're going to bring it up high enough where you can see it's now going up in the Z direction, or the positive Z axis, into or off of the XY plane. Now, as we bring it up, we'll just bring up a certain amount of inches there, or units, and we'll just subtract it out so you can get an idea of what happens when you indeed start moving around your meshes and your solid models to create your model. Now, as I stated earlier, this is a user coordinate system tutorial, so we're going to stick with the basics here. Now, if you go up to the menu ribbon or the menu pull down, and you'll notice you'll have the View tab. Under the View tab, you have your Coordinate System ribbon, which allows you to move your UCS icon all over your model so that you can draw on the plane that you wish to draw, or extrude into the plane that you're looking to extrude, revolve objects around the plane you're looking to revolve your objects, or so on and so forth. So we're just going to do a simple move of our user coordinate system origin point to give you an idea of what we're looking at. So now if we basically go to an area, a grip pops up saying where we'll be. So we're going to try the endpoint here. If you notice, it's shifted to the top or lower right hand corner of our small little rectangular cube there, or a rectangular box, and it is a solid model as opposed to this other box, which is a mesh. I'll get more into that later, the reason for that. In any event, it did move, and it stayed pretty much on the same direction, in the same direction as it was when it was at its origin, which doesn't have to be the case. I mean, if you want to extrude something or rotate or revolve something around an axis, you might need to spin this around accordingly, and which we'll do that next. So now if you go up to this particular button here, you can rotate the user coordinate system about one of the axes. In this case, we're going to rotate it around the, let's say, the Z axis. Now it's going to ask you to specify a rotation point around the Z axis. And basically what this is like is if you grabbed with your thumb and index finger, if you grab this axis and twirled it around like it was a stick, watching the X and the Y spin around, that's basically how you're rotating it. And the same goes for the X and for the Y. If you actually grabbed the axis and twirled it between your fingers, the Y and Z would rotate accordingly. So in this case, we're going to grab it by the Z. I'm going to move away from that so you can see. We're going to grab it by the Z with our fingers, and we're going to rotate it. Now, it's good to know that this works in a counterclockwise rotation. So if you rotate the X, Y axis about the Z 90 degrees, you're going to notice that the X and the Y will rotate counterclockwise. If you gave it a negative angle, like a negative 90 degrees, it would rotate clockwise. So we're going to do that. We're going to rotate about the axis. We're going to give it a 90-degree rotation, and it's actually defaulted to that. And you'll notice that it rotated clockwise 90 degrees. So now your XY plane has stayed the same, but it has shifted, it rotated around. So now when you enter your coordinates or your drawing, as you're drawing, you'll notice that it has changed. 90 is no longer where it was, and so far and so forth. So with this particular exercise, we're now going to move this origin again. We're going to move it over to this particular point. We're going to rotate. Actually, we can probably keep this the same way, or we can maybe move this down to here. Let's move it down there. Let's draw a basic primitive of a cylinder with an origin of this particular point. I believe that this will still be 0, 0. Let's see. Yeah, 0, 0 now is always where the UCS moves to. Let's give it a small little radius and bring it up a little bit. And now you see our model is starting to take shape. We can subtract out of this mesh, which we have to turn into a solid, and then subtract out our cylinder, and notice that we've modeled, or at least we've sculpted, a small arc or chord out of our box utilizing the 3D Boolean function of AutoCAD. Again, the UCS icon tool is helpful when you're evolving shapes and moving things around so that you can sculpt a drawing, because drawing on one plane it becomes very, very tedious to do that. Lots of different ways in which you can do this. One of these is one of the simplest ways. There's a whole host of coordinate commands that you could utilize in AutoCAD. We're just going to touch on a couple of them. This one here, though, the 3-point command, is actually a very useful one if you're really just looking to use points to move your UCS icon around. Now, selecting the 3-point user coordinate button, you'll notice the prompt will ask you for a new origin point. We'll give it the origin point of this particular point. Specify point on the positive portion of the x-axis. Now, if you notice where this is wherever you want the x-axis to be. In this case, we're going to want the x-axis to be, let's say, along this line segment. Now it's going to ask you for the positive portion of the y-axis on the xy plane, which is going to be the perpendicular to that, and there it is. So now your UCS is aligned based on 3 points that you've given it. An origin point, an x-axis positive direction, and a y-axis positive direction. And I think for now that can conclude our tutorial for this particular UCS lesson. I hope it's been useful.